The heavy crystal pitcher caught the afternoon sunlight just a fraction of a second before its freezing contents, jagged ice cubes, bruised lemon wedges, and a gallon of water, crashed against Sophia's chest. The icy shock stole the breath from her lungs, soaking her silk blouse instantly. Around the lavish conservatory, the clinking of porcelain teacups abruptly ceased, replaced by a collective, horrified gasp from the wealthiest women in Connecticut. Beatrice Kensington, Sophia's future mother-in-law, stood holding the empty pitcher with a chilling, triumphant smirk, ready to declare Sophia unfit for her son. But Beatrice's victory was cut short. Heavy footsteps echoed in the grand hall, the mahogany doors swung violently open, and the one man capable of buying the entire Kensington bloodline twice over stepped into the room. The drive up the winding, tree-lined stretch of the Merritt Parkway was supposed to be a journey toward a happy future. But for Sophia Hayes, it felt entirely like a march toward an execution. Beside her, Theodore Kensington tapped his fingers against the leather steering wheel of his vintage Porsche, humming along to a classical radio station, completely oblivious to the knot twisting in Sophia's stomach. "You're going to love Rosewood," Theo said, casting a brilliant, carefree smile in her direction. "Mother has been preparing for your arrival all week. She even had the guest quarters in the East Wing aired out specifically for you." Sophia offered a tight, polite smile, smoothing the fabric of her tailored beige trousers. "I'm sure it's beautiful, Theo. I hope we get along. We come from very different worlds." "Nonsense," Theo dismissed with a wave of his hand, his diamond signet ring catching the light. "You're a talented woman, Sophia. Mother appreciates hard work. Once she sees how happy you make me, the rest will fall into place." Theo was charming, handsome, and born into a family whose name was etched into the cornerstones of museums and university libraries across the East Coast. He was also terribly naive. Sophia, on the other hand, had built her life from the ground up. She was an independent architectural consultant who lived comfortably but modestly. She rarely spoke of her family, specifically her older brother, Arthur. To the world, Sophia was a self-made woman with no notable pedigree. She preferred it that way. She wanted a man who loved her for her mind and her heart, not for the staggering, unimaginable wealth her brother commanded in the tech valleys of California. As the Porsche crunched onto the long gravel driveway, the Kensington estate loomed into view. Rosewood Manor was a sprawling, ivy-choked limestone mansion that looked less like a home and more like a fortress designed to keep the unworthy out. Standing at the top of the sweeping stone steps was Beatrice Kensington. Even from 50 yards away, Sophia could feel the drop in temperature. Beatrice was a woman carved from marble and old money. Her silver hair was styled into an immaculate, immovable bob, and she wore a tailored tweed suit that probably cost more than Sophia's first car. As Theo brought the car to a halt and rushed to open Sophia's door, Beatrice did not descend the steps to meet them. She waited, forcing Sophia to climb toward her. "Mother," Theo beamed, kissing Beatrice on both cheeks. "You look radiant. I present to you, Sophia." Sophia extended a hand, her heart hammering against her ribs. "Mrs. Kensington, it is an absolute honor to finally meet you. Theo has told me so much about this beautiful estate." Beatrice looked at Sophia's outstretched hand for a full 3 seconds, just long enough to make it excruciatingly awkward, before briefly touching her cold, ring-laden fingers to Sophia's. "Sophia," Beatrice said, her voice a slow, aristocratic drawl that dripped with condescension. "Welcome. Theodore has spoken of you incessantly. He tells me you draw buildings for a living?" "I'm an architectural consultant, yes," Sophia replied, maintaining her polite smile despite the immediate belittlement of her career. "Fascinating," Beatrice murmured, her eyes performing a rapid, clinical sweep of Sophia's outfit, lingering critically on her sensible leather loafers. "I suppose it is quite trendy for young women to have jobs these days. Come inside. Maria will take your bags. I do hope you packed something appropriate for dinner. The Carmichaels are joining us, and Sylvia has rather exacting standards." Theo squeezed Sophia's shoulder, entirely missing the hostility. "See? She loves you," he whispered. The interior of Rosewood Manor smelled of beeswax, old paper, and fading wealth. What Theo didn't know, and what Sophia had only deduced through subtle clues in the architectural community, was that the Kensington fortune was bleeding out. Decades of poor investments by Theo's late father, combined with Beatrice's refusal to curtail her extravagant spending, had left the family rich in assets, but dangerously poor in liquidity. Beatrice didn't just want a wife for Theo. She needed an heiress. She needed a lifeline. And in Beatrice's eyes, Sophia Hayes was nothing but a parasitic weed threatening to choke the last of the Kensington rosebushes. Dinner that evening was a masterclass in psychological warfare. Sylvia Carmichael, a woman whose face was pulled terrifyingly tight by multiple surgeries, sat across from Sophia, acting as Beatrice's chief interrogator. "So, Sophia, dear," Sylvia began, slicing into her medium-rare duck breast. "Beatrice tells me you reside in a rather quaint apartment in the city. Do your parents live nearby?" "My parents passed away when I was quite young, Mrs. Carmichael," Sophia answered evenly, taking a sip of water. Beatrice sighed dramatically, placing her silver fork down. A tragedy, truly. To be orphaned and left to fend for oneself in the public school system. It is a miracle you haven't turned to a life of crime, my dear. Theo chuckled nervously. "Mother?" "Sophia went to Cornell on a full academic scholarship." "Oh, a scholarship," Beatrice said, the word tasting sour in her mouth. "How charitable of them. The Kensingtons, of course, have an endowed chair at Yale. We believe in supporting those less fortunate, don't we, Sylvia?" "Absolutely," Sylvia chimed in, her eyes gleaming with malice. "Tell me, Sophia, what was your maiden name? Perhaps we know some of your extended relatives? The Hayes family of Boston, perhaps?" "Just the Hayes family of Chicago, originally," Sophia said softly, her mind flashing to her brother Arthur, who at this very moment was likely closing a multi-billion-dollar acquisition in Tokyo. "We are a very small family, just myself and my brother." "A brother," Beatrice noted, her eyebrows arching. "And what does he do? Is he also a tradesman?" Sophia smiled, a genuine warm expression that seemed to irritate Beatrice even further. "Arthur is in technology. He works with computers." "A computer repairman," Beatrice concluded loudly, looking at Sylvia with a mix of pity and absolute disgust. "Well, every family needs someone to fix the Wi-Fi, I suppose. Theo, darling, pass the asparagus." Sophia bit her tongue so hard she tasted copper. She looked at Theo, waiting for him to defend her, to correct the assumption, or at least change the subject. But Theo was busy discussing his golf handicap with Sylvia's husband. He was oblivious. He was safe in his bubble, and Sophia was entirely alone in the shark tank. The following afternoon was slated for what Beatrice called a casual afternoon tea in the estate's sprawling, glass-domed conservatory. Sophia knew better. After the agonizing dinner the night before, she knew today was the main event, the public execution of her character in front of Beatrice's inner circle of elite socialites. Sophia spent the morning in the guest wing, pacing the Aubusson rugs. She pulled out her phone and stared at the screen. She had a missed call from Arthur. She dialed him back, the line trilling only once before his deep, calm voice filled her ear. "Sophia Bear," Arthur said, the exhaustion of a 12-hour flight evident in his tone. "I just landed in New York. The Tokyo deal is finalized. How is the Lion's Den?" Sophia let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding, stepping over to the window to look out at the manicured lawns. "It's challenging, Artie. Beatrice is exactly the kind of old money snob we read about in Dickens' novels. She thinks I'm a penniless gold digger dragging her precious son into the mud." Arthur's voice hardened instantly, the protective older brother eclipsing the ruthless CEO. "Give me the word, Sophia. I'll buy the mortgage to that crumbling manor and evict her by Tuesday." Sophia laughed, the sound echoing hollowly in the massive, drafty room. It wasn't an empty threat. Arthur Hayes, founder and majority shareholder of Zenith Innovations, had a net worth north of $40 billion. He could buy Rosewood Manor with the interest he made in a week. "No, Arthur. You promised to stay out of this. I need to know if Theo is strong enough to stand by me when he thinks I have nothing. If I tell them who you are, Beatrice will fake a smile and roll out the red carpet. I'd never know her true colors. And worse, I'd never know if Theo is marrying me for me or for the Hayes capital." "Theo is a weak man, Sophia," Arthur warned quietly. "I had my security team look into the Kensingtons. They are practically insolvent. Beatrice has maxed out lines of credit against the estate. They are drowning, and she's looking for a Vanderbilt to throw them a life preserver. When she realizes you aren't one, she will try to destroy you." "I can handle an aging socialite, Artie," Sophia said, though her hands were trembling slightly. "Just focus on your meetings. I'll see you when I get back to the city." "I'm staying at the plaza," Arthur replied. "Keep your phone close. If she crosses a line, I'm coming to get you." Sophia hung up, feeling a surge of resolve. She dressed carefully, choosing a vintage cream silk dress that was elegant, but bore no recognizable designer logos. She pinned her hair back, applied a minimal amount of makeup, and descended the grand staircase. The conservatory was stiflingly warm, the air thick with the scent of blooming orchids and expensive heavy perfumes. A dozen women sat around wrought-iron tables, sipping Earl Grey and nibbling on cucumber sandwiches. The moment Sophia stepped through the glass doors, the chatter died down to a low, buzzing murmur. "Vultures," Sophia thought, circling the carcass. Theo was standing near the doorway, looking incredibly uncomfortable surrounded by his mother's friends. When he saw Sophia, he looked relieved. But before he could reach her, his phone vibrated loudly. He checked the screen and grimaced. "Sophia, darling, I'm so sorry. It's the London office. There's an emergency with a merger. I have to take this upstairs in my study. I'll only be 20 minutes. Sophia caught his arm, her eyes pleading silently. "Don't leave me here." "Theo, maybe it can wait," she asked softly. "It can't," he insisted, already backing away. "Mother will take wonderful care of you. Mingle, get to know the ladies." And with that, her only shield vanished. Beatrice glided across the terracotta tiles, her eyes gleaming with predatory delight. "Ah, the guest of honor has arrived. Ladies, may I present Miss Sophia Hayes, Theodore's current companion." The blatant disrespect of the word companion was not lost on anyone. A few women tittered behind their teacups. "Come sit, Sophia," Beatrice commanded, gesturing to a wrought-iron chair placed dead center of the room, exposing her to everyone's gaze. "We were just discussing pedigree. Sylvia's daughter, Madison, has just become engaged to the Duke of Marlborough's nephew. Such a relief when families of good standing unite, isn't it?" Sophia sat down, crossing her ankles. "Congratulations to Madison. I'm sure she's very happy." She is secure, Beatrice corrected sharply. Happiness is fleeting. Security, legacy, and breeding are what sustain a bloodline. Tell me, Sophia, in your modest upbringing, what values did your computer repairman brother instill in you? The women leaned in. This was the blood sport they had come for. Sophia kept her voice modulated, refusing to show anger. My brother taught me the value of integrity, Mrs. Kensington. He taught me that a person's worth is measured by their actions and their character, not by the balance in their bank account or the name on their trust fund. How incredibly poetic, Sylvia Carmichael sneered from the sidelines, and how very convenient for someone who has neither a bank account nor a trust fund. Laughter rippled through the conservatory. Sophia's cheeks flushed, but she held her chin high. I have everything I need, Mrs. Carmichael, Sophia replied firmly. I am financially independent, and I am proud of the life I have built. Built? Beatrice laughed, a harsh, grating sound. My dear girl, you haven't built anything. You have latched on to my son. You saw a wealthy, kind-hearted boy from a prestigious family, and you dug your claws in. You think I don't see exactly what you are? Sophia stood up. The polite veneer was gone. Mrs. Kensington, I love Theo, but I assure you, I am not after your family's money. If Sophia had known the true state of the Kensington finances, she would have realized how deeply those words cut. Beatrice's face went purple with sudden, unhinged rage. Sophia's implication, even unintentional, that she didn't care about their money, struck the rawest nerve in Beatrice's desperate, debt-ridden soul. How dare you? Beatrice hissed, stepping closer to Sophia, closing the distance until they were mere feet apart. The entire conservatory went dead silent. Even the birds in the brass cages seemed to stop singing. You walk into my home, a home that has hosted presidents and royalty, wearing off-the-rack rags, and you insult me? You patronize me? I did no such thing, Sophia said, her voice remarkably steady. I am simply defending my intentions. If my presence is so offensive to you, I will pack my bags and wait for Theo in the city. You will not leave until I am finished with you, Beatrice shrieked, the mask of the aristocratic lady completely shattering, revealing the frantic, cornered woman beneath. She moved toward the beverage cart, her hands shaking with fury. You are a parasite, Sophia Hayes, Beatrice spat, grabbing the heavy crystal pitcher filled with iced lemon water. You come from nothing. Your parents were nobodies who left you nothing. Your brother is a grease-stained laborer. You think you can infiltrate this family? You think you are fit to carry the Kensington name? Sophia's eyes narrowed. Do not speak about my family. I will speak about whatever I please in my own home, Beatrice roared. You are trash. You are dirt on the soles of our shoes, and it is time someone washed you away. With a violent, sweeping motion, Beatrice hurled the contents of the pitcher. The heavy crystal pitcher caught the afternoon sunlight just a fraction of a second before its freezing contents. Jagged ice cubes, bruised lemon wedges, and a gallon of water crashed against Sophia's chest. The icy shock stole the breath from her lungs, soaking her silk blouse instantly. The sheer force of the water knocked Sophia a step backward, her sensible loafers slipping slightly on the wet terracotta tiles. Around the lavish conservatory, the clinking of porcelain teacups abruptly ceased, replaced by a collective, horrified gasp from the wealthiest women in Connecticut. Ice cubes clattered loudly against the floorboards, rolling under the wrought-iron tables. Sophia stood frozen, water dripping from her chin, her hair plastered to the sides of her face. The beautiful cream vintage dress was ruined, clinging transparently to her skin, stained yellow by the lemon rinds. Beatrice stood panting, holding the empty crystal pitcher, a chilling, triumphant smirk spreading across her face. She had done it. She had humiliated the girls so profoundly, so publicly, that Sophia would have no choice but to run away in tears, never to show her face in their circles again. "Maria!" Beatrice snapped to the terrified maid cowering near the door. "Bring a mop. The trash has leaked all over my floor." Sylvia Carmichael let out a sharp, cruel bark of laughter. Sophia slowly wiped the water from her eyes. She did not cry. She did not run. The humiliation burned in her chest, a hot, searing flame that quickly evaporated the cold water clinging to her skin. She looked at Beatrice, and then she looked toward the doorway, praying to see Theo. Praying that her fiancé had heard the commotion, that he would rush in, wrap his jacket around her, and defend her against this madness. The doorway remained empty. Theo was nowhere to be found. "Are you deaf, girl?" Beatrice taunted, placing the pitcher down with a loud thud. "I said, get out of my house. The engagement is over." "You don't get to make that decision," Sophia said, her voice shaking. But not from tears. It was pure, unadulterated anger. "Oh, I think I do," Beatrice gloated, crossing her arms. "Look at you. You're pathetic. Who is going to save you? Your little brother? Is he going to fix my computer to pay for your cab fare back to whatever slum you crawled out of?" Crunch, crunch, crunch. The unmistakable sound of heavy tires aggressively tearing up the pristine gravel driveway echoed through the open conservatory windows. It wasn't the polite purr of a Porsche. It was the deep, guttural growl of a massive engine. Beatrice frowned, glancing toward the glass panes. Who is arriving at this hour? Outside, a convoy of 3 pitch-black SUVs pulled up to the front steps, flanking a custom, armor-plated Mercedes Maybach. The sheer presence of the vehicles screamed power, a violent contrast to the delicate old-world aesthetic of Rosewood Manor. "Maria, go see who that is and tell them we are not receiving visitors," Beatrice ordered, suddenly flustered. But there was no time. Heavy, purposeful footsteps echoed in the grand hall, moving with terrifying speed and authority. The sound bypassed the parlor, bypassed the dining room, and headed straight for the conservatory. Bang! The heavy mahogany doors to the conservatory swung violently open, slamming against the walls with a force that rattled the glass dome above them. The women shrieked, clutching their pearls as 3 large men in immaculate black suits and earpieces stepped into the room, their eyes scanning the space with terrifying efficiency. They parted like the Red Sea, and the one man capable of buying the entire Kensington bloodline twice over stepped into the room. Arthur Hayes did not look like a computer repairman. He looked like a king who had come to declare war. He was 6'3", broad-shouldered, dressed in a bespoke charcoal Tom Ford suit that cost more than Beatrice's entire wardrobe. His dark hair was impeccably styled, but his eyes, icy, piercing blue, were fixed squarely on Sophia. When Arthur saw his sister, dripping wet, shivering slightly, with a bruised lemon wedge resting near her feet, the temperature in the room plummeted to absolute 0. The billionaire tech titan did not scream. He did not yell. He walked slowly across the room, his leather shoes clicking against the wet tiles, ignoring the gasping socialites, as if they were nothing more than insects. He stopped in front of Sophia. He unbuttoned his suit jacket, slipped it off his shoulders, and gently draped it over her shivering frame. The scent of expensive cologne and the warmth of his body heat enveloped her. "I told you," Arthur said softly, his voice thick with emotion as he brushed a wet strand of hair from her cheek. "I told you to call me if she crossed a line." Sophia looked up at her brother, finally letting a single tear fall. "I didn't have to call. How did you know?" I own the telecommunications network that services this county, Sophia, Arthur said, his voice loud enough for the entire room to hear. When my sister's heart rate spikes on her smartwatch, my security team knows about it. Arthur turned slowly on his heel, his towering frame casting a long, dark shadow over Beatrice Kensington. Beatrice had taken 3 steps back, her face drained of all colour. Her eyes darted from the custom-tailored suit to the terrifying security detail, and finally to the man's face. A face she recognized. A face that had been on the cover of Forbes, Time, and the Wall Street Journal for the last 3 years running. You, Beatrice stammered, her voice trembling violently. You are Arthur Hayes, the CEO of Zenith. Arthur stepped toward her. Beatrice shrank back, practically colliding with the beverage cart. I am Arthur Hayes, he said, his voice a low, terrifying rumble that vibrated in the chests of everyone in the room. And you, Mrs. Kensington, just threw a pitcher of water on the sole heiress to the Hayes fortune. My little sister. The silence in the conservatory was absolute, save for the steady drip, drip, drip of lemon water falling from Sophia's ruined silk dress onto the terracotta tiles. The women who, only moments before, had been practically salivating over Sophia's public humiliation, were now frozen in their wrought-iron chairs, their faces pale masks of sheer terror. Arthur Hayes did not raise his voice. He didn't need to. The raw, suffocating gravity of his presence did all the work. He stood perfectly still, his tailored Tom Ford suit an armor of unimaginable wealth, his icy blue eyes fixed on Beatrice Kensington like a hawk examining a field mouse. The sole heiress, Beatrice repeated, the words tumbling from her trembling lips as if she were learning a foreign language. Her eyes darted frantically between Sophia, who was now safely enveloped in Arthur's oversized suit jacket, and the towering billionaire. No, that is impossible. She said her brother worked in computers. I said my brother is in technology, Mrs. Kensington, Sophia interrupted, her voice gaining strength as the warmth of Arthur's jacket seeped into her skin. I told you we were the Hayes family from Chicago. I simply omitted the corporate portfolio. Sylvia Carmichael, whose surgically tightened face looked as though it might actually crack under the strain of her shock, dropped her porcelain teacup. It shattered against the saucer, the sharp clink echoing like a gunshot. Arthur Hayes, Sylvia whispered to the woman beside her, her voice trembling. Zenith Innovations. He's worth billions. Beatrice's mind was short-circuiting. The arrogant, untouchable matriarch of Rosewood Manor was rapidly calculating the catastrophic error she had just made. The woman she had just assaulted, the woman she had called trash and dirt, was the sister of a man who routinely dined with heads of state and whose company possessed a market capitalization larger than the GDP of several small nations. Mr. Hayes, Beatrice stammered, forcing a sickly, panicked smile onto her face. She took a step forward, her hands raised in a placating gesture. Arthur, please, this is a terrible misunderstanding. A terrible, dreadful joke. We were just having a bit of fun, a little initiation for Sophia into our circles. The water, it slipped. My hands. My arthritis, you see. Do not insult my intelligence, Beatrice. Arthur's voice cut through her pathetic lies like a scalpel. He didn't use her title. He stripped her of her aristocratic dignity in a single breath. My security detail has been recording the audio in this room for the last 15 minutes. I heard you call my sister a parasite. I heard you tell her to leave your house. I heard the glass pitcher hit her chest. Beatrice staggered back, clutching the edge of the beverage cart for physical support. Her lungs heaved as she struggled to draw breath. Before she could form another desperate excuse, the heavy mahogany doors creaked wider. "Mother, I heard a commotion. What on earth is—" Theodore Kensington walked into the conservatory, his phone still clutched in his hand, a look of mild irritation on his handsome face. He stopped dead in his tracks. His eyes swept over the shattered teacup, the terrified socialites, the imposing men in black suits guarding the exits, his mother looking as though she were about to face a firing squad, and finally, Sophia. Sophia stood shivering, her hair soaked, lemon rinds at her feet, wearing a man's oversized charcoal jacket. "Sophia?" Theo gasped, rushing forward. "What happened? You're soaking wet! Mother, what is going on here? Who are these men?" Arthur turned his head slowly, his piercing gaze locking onto Theo. The look of utter disdain on the billionaire's face was enough to make Theo falter and stop 3 feet away. "You must be Theodore," Arthur said, his tone devoid of any warmth. "The man who promised to protect my sister, yet leaves her alone in a room full of vipers the moment his phone rings." Theo blinked, utterly confused. "Who the hell are you? And why are you touching my fiancé? Security! Mother, call the police!" "Theo, stop!" Beatrice shrieked, her voice cracking hysterically. She lunged forward and grabbed her son's arm, her perfectly manicured nails digging into his cashmere sweater. "Don't speak to him that way. Do you know who this is? This is Arthur Hayes, the CEO of Zenith." Theo's jaw went slack. The irritation vanished, instantly replaced by a greedy, awe-struck reverence. He looked at Arthur, then slowly turned his head to look at Sophia. "Hayes," Theo whispered, the gears in his head finally turning. "Sophia, you're a Hayes, as in the Zenith Hayes? The Silicon Valley Hayes?" Sophia looked at the man she had planned to marry. She looked for concern. She looked for anger on her behalf. She looked for the man who would demand to know who had thrown water on the woman he loved. Instead, she saw a man performing mental arithmetic. She saw dollar signs light up in his eyes. "Yes, Theo," Sophia said softly, her heart breaking into 1,000 jagged pieces. "I'm a Hayes." "Why didn't you tell me?" Theo asked, a massive, inappropriate smile breaking across his face. He actually laughed, a relieved, hysterical chuckle. "My God, Sophia, we're saved. The estate, the debts. Mother, do you realize what this means?" "It means absolutely nothing for you, Theodore," Arthur interjected, his voice dropping an octave, carrying the lethal weight of an executioner, "because as of this exact second, the engagement is terminated." Theo's smile vanished. "What?" "Now wait a minute, Mr. Hayes. Arthur, I understand you're upset about whatever happened here, but Sophia and I love each other. We are getting married." "Are you?" Arthur challenged, crossing his arms over his crisp white dress shirt. "Because while you were upstairs taking a phone call, your mother threw a pitcher of ice water at your fiancée, called her a penniless gold digger, and formally evicted her from this crumbling mausoleum." Theo turned to Beatrice, horror finally dawning on him. "Mother, you threw water on her. Are you out of your mind? She's a billionaire's sister." "I didn't know," Beatrice wailed, tears of genuine panic finally spilling over her mascaraed eyelashes. "She wore off-the-rack clothing. She drove a rented sedan. How was I supposed to know she was hiding a fortune? Sophia, darling, please, you must forgive me. It was the stress, the financial stress of the estate. It makes me act out of character. You understand, don't you?" Sophia felt a wave of nausea wash over her. It wasn't the cold water, it was the sheer, putrid hypocrisy radiating from Beatrice and Theo. "Your character was perfectly clear 5 minutes ago, Mrs. Kensington," Sophia said, stepping out from behind Arthur's towering frame. "You didn't care about my heart. You didn't care about how much I loved your son. You only cared that I couldn't buy your affection. And Theo—" Sophia turned to her fiancé, her voice breaking slightly. "You didn't even ask if I was okay. Your first thought was that your debts were paid. Sophia, baby." "No, that's not." Theo reached out, but one of Arthur's security guards seamlessly stepped between them, a silent, immovable wall of muscle. "Let's talk about those debts, shall we?" Arthur said, reaching into the inner pocket of his suit jacket and pulling out a folded piece of heavy stock paper. He slowly unfolded it. "As Sophia mentioned, I like to protect my family. When my sister told me she was engaged to the heir of the Kensington legacy, I had my wealth management team at Goldman Sachs do a little routine background check." Arthur began to read from the paper, his voice echoing in the silent, horrified room. "Rosewood Manor, appraised at $22 million, currently leveraged with 3 separate mortgages totaling $28 million. You owe $4 million in back taxes to the state of Connecticut. You have defaulted on 2 bridge loans from BlackRock. And most interestingly, your late husband borrowed heavily against a private equity fund to cover your rather exorbitant gambling debts in Monaco 5 years ago." The socialites in the room gasped collectively. Sylvia Carmichael covered her mouth, her eyes wide with malicious delight. The Kensington secret was out. They weren't just poor, they were destitute. Beatrice looked as though she might faint. She swayed on her feet, clutching her pearl necklace as if trying to strangle herself. How did you get those files? They are sealed." "I am Arthur Hayes," he replied simply, as if that explained the mechanics of the universe. "I don't just read files, Beatrice, I buy them." Arthur stepped forward, handing the piece of paper to Theo, who took it with trembling hands. "Last night, while Sophia was enduring your insufferable dinner, I made a few phone calls," Arthur continued, his eyes gleaming with ruthless satisfaction. "I purchased your debt from BlackRock. I bought out your mortgages from Chase Private Wealth. I even bought the outstanding markers from the Monaco casinos through a proxy corporation." The color completely drained from Theo's face as he read the document. It was a transfer of deed and debt. "You," Theo whispered, looking up at Arthur with absolute terror. "You own us." "I own the roof over your head, the car in your driveway, and the silk sheets on your bed," Arthur confirmed, his voice cold as ice. "I hold the promissory notes to your entire pathetic existence. I came here today to give them to Sophia as a wedding present, to ensure she would always have the upper hand in this house." Arthur turned his gaze back to Beatrice, who was now openly weeping, her aristocratic facade entirely pulverized. "But seeing how you treat my blood," Arthur said, "seeing you humiliate the only good thing that has ever walked into this decaying mansion, I have changed my mind." "Arthur, please!" Beatrice dropped to her knees. The wealthy women around her recoiled in disgust as the grand Beatrice Kensington grovelled on the wet terracotta floor, her tweed suit soaking up the spilled lemon water. "We will do anything. I will publicly apologize. I will step down from the country club. Please do not take my home. We have nowhere to go." Arthur looked down at her, entirely unmoved. "You should have thought of that before you decided to play God with a pitcher of water." Theo pushed past the security guard, desperation making him reckless. He dropped to his knees beside his mother, grabbing Sophia's hand, though she immediately tried to pull it away. "Sophia, please," Theo begged, tears streaming down his handsome, cowardly face. "I love you. I do. Mother is just old-fashioned and proud. We can fix this. We can go to counseling. We can get married, just the 2 of us. We don't need her." Sophia looked down at the man kneeling in the spilled water. She saw him not as the charming heir who had wooed her in Manhattan, but as a terrified little boy clinging to a life raft. If she had been a penniless architect, he would have let his mother throw her out without a second thought. But because she held the keys to the kingdom, he was willing to throw his own mother to the wolves. "You don't love me, Theo," Sophia said softly, a profound sense of peace suddenly washing over her. The pain of the betrayal was already dulling, replaced by the sharp, empowering clarity of reality. "You love the comfort I can provide. You love the bubble you live in." But that bubble just popped. Sophia reached to her left hand. She grasped the Kensington heirloom engagement ring, a 3-carat emerald-cut diamond surrounded by sapphires. She pulled it off her finger. "This belongs to your family," Sophia said. She didn't hand it to him. She didn't throw it. She simply opened her hand and let it drop. The heavy platinum ring fell with a soft plink, landing perfectly inside the empty crystal pitcher Beatrice had used as a weapon, which now rested on the floor. "Keep it," Sophia said. "You're going to need something to pawn for the moving trucks." Theo let out a sob, burying his face in his hands. Beatrice remained frozen on the floor, staring blankly at the pitcher, her mind entirely broken by the magnitude of her ruin. Arthur placed a gentle, protective hand on Sophia's shoulder. "Are you ready to go home, Sophia Bear?" Sophia looked up at her brother, offering him the first genuine smile she had managed since arriving in Connecticut. "Yes, Artie, I'm ready." Arthur nodded to his security detail. "Clear a path." The men in black suits stepped forward, gently but firmly gesturing for the terrified socialites to step aside. Arthur and Sophia walked together toward the grand mahogany doors. Just before stepping out into the hallway, Arthur paused and looked back over his shoulder. The conservatory looked like a war zone. The wreckage wasn't physical, but the destruction was absolute. "Beatrice," Arthur called out. The ruined matriarch slowly lifted her head, her makeup running in dark, jagged streaks down her pale cheeks. "My lawyers will be in touch on Monday morning," Arthur said, his tone purely business, devoid of any emotion. "You have exactly 30 days to vacate my property. I suggest you start packing. The winters in Connecticut are quite brutal when you can't afford the heating bill." He didn't wait for a response. Arthur guided Sophia out of the conservatory, down the grand, echoing hallways of Rosewood Manor, and out the heavy oak front doors. The afternoon air was crisp and clean, washing away the cloying scent of orchids and arrogance. The armor-plated Maybach sat idling on the gravel, the driver holding the rear door open. Arthur helped Sophia inside, wrapping a plush cashmere blanket around her shoulders from the back seat compartment, before sliding in beside her. As the convoy of black SUVs crunched aggressively down the gravel driveway, leaving the estate behind, Sophia leaned her head against the tinted window. Inside the conservatory, the silence lasted only until the sound of the engines faded. Then, the vultures descended. Sylvia Carmichael immediately pulled her diamond-encrusted smartphone from her designer purse. She didn't offer a hand to Beatrice. She didn't comfort Theo. She simply stepped over the puddle of water, her eyes gleaming with the thrill of the greatest scandal of the decade. "Margaret," Sylvia whispered eagerly into the phone, turning her back on the weeping Kensingtons. "You will not believe what just happened at Rosewood. Beatrice is finished, completely bankrupt. Oh, and you know that girl Theo brought home? She's a billionaire. Yes, a real one. Honey, call the country club board immediately. We need to call an emergency vote to revoke Beatrice's membership before the bank forecloses." The other women followed suit, practically tripping over themselves to rush out of the manor, eager to be the first to spread the gospel of Beatrice Kensington's spectacular demise. They left their half-eaten cucumber sandwiches. They left their teacups, and they left Beatrice and Theo entirely alone on the wet floor. The gilded cage had been shattered, the lions had been tamed, and the Kensingtons were finally exposed to the harsh, unforgiving light of the real world. 6 months later, the crisp autumn winds sweeping through Manhattan carried with them the undeniable energy of a new season. For Sophia Hayes, the chill in the air was invigorating, a far cry from the freezing, humiliating shock of the water that had once soaked her skin in the Kensington Conservatory. Inside the grand ballroom of the Pierre Hotel, champagne flowed like liquid gold, and the soft, elegant strains of a string quartet floated above the chatter of New York's genuine elite. Tonight was not a gathering of idle socialites, desperately clinging to fading pedigrees. It was a celebration of innovation, industry, and philanthropy. Sophia stood near the towering ice sculpture at the center of the room, looking breathtaking in a custom-tailored emerald silk gown that perfectly complemented her radiant, unbothered smile. She was no longer just the brilliant architectural consultant from Chicago. She was the newly appointed lead architect for the Harrison Caldwell Foundation, tasked with designing a sprawling, $200 million cultural arts center in the heart of Brooklyn. Harrison Caldwell himself, a formidable real estate magnate whose wealth dwarfed even the old money of Connecticut, stood beside her, introducing her to the mayor and several prominent city council members. Sophia had not needed Arthur's money to secure the Caldwell contract. She had submitted her bid anonymously through her firm, letting her visionary designs speak for themselves. When Harrison discovered that the genius behind the sweeping glass and steel blueprints was Arthur Hayes's sister, it was merely the icing on the cake. "You've outdone yourself, Sophia," Harrison said, raising his crystal flute in her direction. "The press is already calling your design the most significant architectural addition to the city since the Guggenheim. You have a rare gift." "Thank you, Harrison," Sophia replied smoothly, her confidence absolute. "I believe that spaces should welcome people, not intimidate them. Architecture should elevate the human spirit, not serve as a monument to ego." Across the ballroom, Arthur watched his sister with quiet pride. He stood near the bar, nursing a bourbon, his formidable presence keeping the more opportunistic social climbers at a respectful distance. He knew Sophia had found her footing. The trauma of Rosewood Manor was gone, replaced by a fierce, untouchable grace. But the ghosts of the past rarely stay buried without making one final, desperate attempt to haunt the living. The heavy mahogany doors of the ballroom suddenly pushed open, breaking the rhythmic flow of the waitstaff. The security guards at the entrance immediately moved to intercept the intruder, but the man dodged past them, his eyes frantically scanning the glittering crowd until they locked onto the emerald green of Sophia's dress. "Sophia!" The voice was hoarse, ragged, and entirely out of place in the refined elegance of the Pierre. The string quartet faltered, a few stray notes squeaking out before the musicians abruptly stopped playing. The low hum of conversation died down, replaced by a ripple of murmurs as the guests turned to witness the disruption. Sophia turned slowly. Her heart didn't race. Her hands didn't tremble. Standing 10 feet away, breathing heavily, was Theodore Kensington. He was practically unrecognizable. The golden boy charm, the effortless arrogance, the perfectly coiffed hair. It was all gone. Theo wore a rumpled, off-the-rack suit that hung loosely on his thinning frame. His face was pale, shadowed with days of dark stubble, and his eyes carried the frantic, hollow look of a man who had lost everything and had spent the last 6 months tumbling down an endless flight of stairs. "Theo," Sophia said, her voice perfectly modulated, carrying the cool detachment of someone speaking to a stranger who had asked for directions. Arthur immediately set his bourbon down and began walking toward the center of the room, his jaw set. But Sophia held up a single elegant hand. "I have this," the gesture said. Arthur paused, crossing his arms and waiting. "You have to stop this, Sophia," Theo pleaded, his voice cracking loudly in the silent ballroom. He completely ignored Harrison Caldwell and the mayor standing just feet away. "You have to tell your brother to stop. We are ruined. Do you hear me? Ruined." The guests exchanged shocked glances. High society loved a scandal, but they preferred it whispered over tea, not screamed in the middle of a gala. "Theodore," Sophia said calmly, stepping away from Harrison to face her former fiancé fully. "You are trespassing at a private event. I highly suggest you leave before hotel security physically removes you." "I don't care about security," Theo shouted, taking a reckless step forward. He looked entirely unhinged. "You owe me an explanation. We were supposed to be married. And what did you do? You let Arthur take Rosewood. You took my family's legacy. Mother is living in a 2-bedroom rental in Poughkeepsie, Sophia. Poughkeepsie. She works as a receptionist at a dental clinic, just to pay for her groceries. Sylvia Carmichael won't even return our phone calls." Sophia stared at him, feeling absolutely nothing. No pity, no anger, just a profound, clinical observation of a man who still, after everything, refused to take responsibility for his own life. "Your mother is experiencing the reality that 99% of the world navigates every single day, Theo," Sophia replied, her voice echoing clearly across the marble floors. "Working for a living is not a tragedy. It is life." "But it was our home!" Theo cried, his hands balled into fists at his sides. "It was the Kensington estate. It has been in my family for a century, and Arthur stole it just to spite us." "Arthur didn't steal anything," Sophia corrected, her tone dropping to a sharp, authoritative register that silenced the entire room. "Arthur purchased your family's suffocating, toxic debt from the banks that were weeks away from foreclosing on you anyway. He paid off the millions your mother gambled away. He paid off the back taxes your family ignored. He didn't ruin you, Theo. The Kensingtons ruined the Kensingtons. Arthur simply bought the wreckage." Theo blinked, tears of pure frustration pooling in his eyes. "Then give it back. If it means nothing to you, tell him to give the deed back to us. We can start over. I'll get a job, Sophia. I swear it. Just give me my house back." Sophia looked at him, and for the first time all evening, a small, razor-sharp smile touched her lips. This was the twist Theo had not anticipated. "Arthur doesn't own Rosewood Manor anymore, Theo," Sophia said softly, though the acoustics of the ballroom carried her words perfectly. Theo froze. "What? What do you mean? Who did he sell it to?" "He didn't sell it. He transferred the deed to me," Sophia stated, holding her head high. 3 months ago." Theo's face lit up with a sudden, desperate hope. "You own it? Sophia, please. If you own it, you can give it back to me. We can fix this." "I have already fixed it," Sophia said, her voice turning to steel. "I spent the last 3 months redesigning the interior. I had the east wing gutted. I had the conservatory, where your mother threw ice water on me while you hid in your study, completely demolished. In its place, I built a state-of-the-art occupational training facility." Theo stared at her, his mouth hanging open, his brain failing to process the words. A training facility?" "Yes," Sophia continued, her eyes locking onto his with unwavering intensity. "I rezoned the property. Last week, we officially opened the doors to the Hayes Foundation Shelter for Women. It is a transitional housing and educational center for women who have survived domestic and financial abuse. Women who have nothing, who were told they were trash and dirt. Women who need a safe place to rebuild their lives and their independence." A collective, stunned silence fell over the ballroom. Then, from the back of the room, someone began to clap. It was a slow, solitary applause that quickly rippled outward until the entire room, including Harrison Caldwell and the mayor, erupted into thunderous, genuine applause. Theo stumbled backward as if he had been physically struck. The applause deafened him. The realization hit him with the force of a freight train. The grand, historic Kensington estate, the fortress of old money, exclusion, and aristocratic snobbery, was now a public charity shelter for the exact type of women Beatrice Kensington had spent her entire life despising. It was the ultimate, permanent destruction of his mother's legacy. And Sophia had orchestrated it with absolute brilliance. "You destroyed my family," Theo whispered, the fight completely draining out of him, leaving only an empty, broken shell. "No, Theo," Sophia said, her voice gentle but relentlessly firm. "I just washed you away. Now please leave. I have a building to design." She turned her back on him. Hotel security, having finally breached the crowd, flanked Theo on both sides. He didn't resist. He didn't speak another word. Theodore Kensington lowered his head, his shoulders slumped in total defeat, and allowed himself to be escorted out of the Pierre Hotel, disappearing into the cold, unforgiving streets of a city that no longer cared who his grandfather was. Arthur walked over, handing Sophia a fresh glass of champagne. He clinked his glass against hers, a quiet, knowing smile on his face. "To architecture," Arthur murmured. "To strong foundations," Sophia corrected, taking a sip, the sweet, crisp taste of victory lingering on her tongue. The fall of the Kensington Empire became a cautionary whisper in the gilded halls of high society, a stark reminder that arrogance is a terrible substitute for solvency. Beatrice Kensington never recovered from the disgrace. She lived out her remaining years in obscurity, forced to learn the bitter reality of the working class she had so viciously mocked. Theo, stripped of his trust fund and his unearned pride, vanished into mediocrity, a ghost of a legacy that had long since rotted from the inside out. Sophia Hayes, however, soared. She did not let the cruelty of her past harden her heart. Instead, she used it as a blueprint to construct a brighter, more equitable future. The shelter at Rosewood thrived, becoming a beacon of hope and a testament to her resilience. Sophia proved that true wealth is not measured by the car you drive, the designer label on your collar, or the bloodline you inherit. True wealth is the integrity of your character, the strength of your independence, and the courage to stand tall when the world tries to wash you away.